begins with a person named Nate, and we learn that Nate works in a bank and lives a somewhat boring life. Today, Nate leaves the house and goes to his job at the bank as usual. As soon as Nate arrives at the bank, he stands with the manager, Nigel, who was giving a lecture to the new employees at the bank. We learn that Nate is Nigel's assistant. After a while, a new employee named Sherry arrives at the bank. It becomes very clear that Nate is smitten with her, literally from the first glance. Anyway, Nate now enters his office and sits with an older client named Terrence. We learn that Terrence has a store that he took out a loan for, and this store could be closed at any moment because Terrence is unable to repay the bank loan. Terrence is very upset because he and his wife, Betty, who recently passed away, used to work in that store. So Terrence doesn't want to lose the store because it is the one thing. It's important to note that Nate now knows Terrence and his late wife Betty well, so he feels for Terrence and promises to help him. Nate goes to make himself a drink, and at that moment, an employee named Sherry accidentally bumps into him, causing all the hot water he was preparing to spill on his hand. The strange thing is that Nate doesn't feel anything, not even a slight pain. This indicates that Nate actually suffers from a rare condition that makes him emotionally numb, almost as if he doesn't have any feelings or pain. Anyway, Nate just brushes off the incident completely, and Sherry is, of course, surprised that he didn't feel any pain, but the matter passes and he goes to his office. Later, Sherry comes to apologize to him, and she immediately starts her apology. She suggests to Nate, as compensation for what happened today, that they go out together in the evening, and she treats him to something. Nate agrees because, as we mentioned, he likes Sherry, and this is actually the first time Nate feels any emotions towards anyone. Indeed, in the evening, Nate and Sherry go out, and there should be a place they want to go to, and at that place and at that same time, and at that place, at that same time. There was a group of friends who were old school friends sitting here now in the place. One of these friends comes now from Nate and Sherry and keeps mocking Nate and his illness and many things like that. Afterward, he leaves the place, and of course, Sherry is upset. But Nate tells her that they are his friends from the old days when he was in school, and they used to mock him a lot when he was young. But of course, he can't feel any pain or any emotions. They used to hit him a lot until he could literally fall over or faint, and of course, he wouldn't feel anything, but they would be happy. At that time, Sherry would be upset and annoyed, wanting to stand up for him but not knowing how. Now Nate goes to the bathroom, and when he comes out, he finds Sherry sitting with his bullying friend, joking around, which makes Nate very upset. But Sherry laughs at Nate's friend and makes him drink a burning hot sauce, turning him into a laughingstock in the place. She mocks him, and then Nate and Sherry leave together. Naturally, Nate is incredibly happy because he starts to feel that Sherry likes him too, as she stood up for him in front of his bullying friend. In any case, Nate and Sherry go to Nate's house where they sit and talk a lot, getting to know each other more and more. Literally, Nate and Sherry genuinely fall in love with each other. The next day, Nate wakes up happy for work. Nate feels this for the first time, making him really happy. After that, Nate goes to work at his bank. While Nate heads to Cherry, a disaster occurs. Suddenly, 3 people enter the bank wearing Santa Claus outfits. Now they pull out their weapons and hold everyone in the bank at gunpoint, spreading fear everywhere. One of the gang members, by the way, grabs the bank manager, Nigel, and keeps demanding him to open the bank vault so they can rob it, but Nigel obviously refuses. Unfortunately, the bandana that was covering the man's face slips down a bit, revealing his face to Nigel. As a result, because the man's face was seen, he shoots Nigel and kills him. After that, the same person grabs Knight because he is the assistant manager, and they demand him to open the vault, but Knight refuses. At that moment, one of the gang members grabs Sherry and threatens to kill her. Since Knight, as we mentioned, loves Sherry, he decides to save her life and tells the thieves how to open the vault. They actually open it and take all the money inside, which is a very large amount. After robbing the vault, they leave with Sherry as a hostage. Exiting, they find police everywhere. They hold everyone at bay, with Sherry, and the police avoid shooting to protect her. The gang quickly takes down the police. They escape in a car with Sherry. A third member escapes alone with the money. As for Knight, he exits the bank and sees an injured officer bleeding. Knight is currently faced with 2 options: either save this officer or take the officer's car and quickly chase after Sherry to catch up with her. But since the officer is about to die, he gives him a belt and ties it around his leg to stop the heavy bleeding. Then he takes the car and speeds off after Sherry. Knight chases the gang in a very intense pursuit until the gang realizes that someone is following them. They decide to split up, with the car carrying Sherry going to the right and the car with the man and the money going to the left. Unfortunately, Knight decides to chase the car with the money, thinking Sherry is in it. He follows it for a long time until the person gets trapped. Knight gets out, points his gun at him, and asks, but the person from the gang, whose name is Ben, cannot say anything to Knight, and immediately engages in a fierce fight with him. They end up fighting and moving into a restaurant, continuing their battle there, causing a commotion. Knight is unable to do much because he is literally just an ordinary bank employee, and now he's fighting someone who used to be in the military and is therefore a skilled fighter. They continue to fight each other, hitting each other in a chaotic manner. He tries to use everything he can to hurt him, for example, grabbing a hot pan to burn him, or picking up a knife to stab him, or literally using anything that could cause harm. However, it won't hurt him as much as it would hurt the other person. This continues until he focuses and notices that the gun he had has fallen into the boiling oil. He decides to make a slightly reckless decision, plunges his hand into the oil to retrieve the gun, and kills the man. He does this successfully, but his hand gets burned. It got burned. And as we said, he doesn't feel anything. In the complex, after this long battle, he realizes that he finishes off a girl like Mona and immediately films the tattoo on his hand, and it's important to understand why it's in front. Anyway, he takes the car and sets off to try to find Sherry, and also, by the way, to escape from the police, because currently the police will definitely come and see that he killed a girl, and then the police will start searching for him. In any case, afterward, Nate contacts someone he knows, his only friend named Roscoe, and asks Roscoe about the place where the tattoo might have been done. He tells him, I will send you the picture. But Nate wants to know the place where the tattoo might have been done so he can go there and ask the person there about his son and his house, because when he reaches these things, he can find the rest of the gang and Sherry's location. Anyway, Roscoe has now done a very extensive search until he found the place, so he tells Nate, and Nate immediately decides to go there and actually sets off on his way. At the same time, Detective Barbara arrives with her assistant, and we learn that they will be overseeing the crime. Barbara currently knows that the Point assistant bank manager, who is Nate, stole a police officer's gun and car and is also chasing the criminals on his own. This makes Barbara somewhat suspicious of Nate, thinking he might be a spy and also working with the gang. She decides to search for him and find him, since Nate was the reason the safe was opened for important criminals. Later, Barbara and her assistant arrive at the restaurant where Nate killed Ben, seeing Ben's body. Barbara is shocked and decides to search for Nate more thoroughly because something seems wrong with him. Now Barbara contacts Nate on his mobile and asks him to turn himself in, and they will continue with the case. But Nate refuses, saying that he is searching for his evil and won't stop what he's doing until he finds it. Barbara wasn't just talking to Nate to convince him to turn himself in. She was stalling him to pinpoint his exact location and eventually catch him. Indeed, Barbara's team manages to locate him, and she is delighted because now she can reach him. I want to mention Nate, as we currently see that he went to the tattoo shop where he knows Ben got a tattoo. Now Nate's daughter comes and takes him into the tattoo shop. Nate pretends that he wants a tattoo, and the shop owner asks him how he found this place. Nate tells him that he is a friend of Ben's and shows him a complete picture of Ben's tattoo, saying he wants a tattoo like that. The shop owner then starts preparing to do the tattoo that Nate wants. But Nate starts trying to get the shop owner to talk to find out Ben's address or info on him. However, the shop owner feels uneasy, sensing a trap. So he decides to confront Nate and grabs a knife to attack him. But Nate is quicker and holds the man at gunpoint. The problem arises when the girl, working with the man, comes and hits Nate, causing him to drop the gun. The shop owner seizes the opportunity and without hesitation attacks Nate. A proper beating. He beats Nate in an extraordinary way. But despite all this, Nate doesn't feel anything, as we mentioned before. This prompts the shop owner to push Nate into a glass display, causing it to shatter on him. At this point, Nate comes up with a brilliant idea after the initial blows, and he starts smashing both his hands into the glass with tremendous force, so that the glass sticks to his hand, and since he doesn't feel any pain anyway, naturally the shop owner is stunned and doesn't understand what's happening as he watches Nate smash his hand into the glass. But now Nate gets up, and with the glass firmly in his hand, he strikes the shop owner with it, causing a serious injury to his eye. But now the man is practically blind and unable to move at all, as he lies on the ground. Here, Nate asks the shop owner for Ben's full name, and he actually tells him. At that moment, Nate records the name and sits with another friend to search for this name and find out exactly where this person's house is located. And he knows he's at his house, so he decided to go to him to reach and secure Sherry. Sherry is in a secret warehouse with the rest of the gang members. The rest of the gang members include the gang leader named Simon Yibu and Andre. Andre is actually Ben's brother. Andre talks to Simon and learns Ben's brother is delayed outside looking unusual, wondering if something happened or if he was caught. That's why he goes out to look for him. Simon worries for Andre and urges him to reconsider as he might get caught. But Andre remains firm and searches for his nephew. Simon joins Sherry and they talk. A shocking revelation unfolds. We learn Sherry is Simon's partner in the robbery operation and his sister. She befriended Nate to gain his trust and access the vault key and introduce it to the gang. And yes, that's why Sherry pretended to love Nate, not because she actually loved him, but because she was ultimately using him. But my friend, Sherry is now sitting sadly, and that's because she genuinely fell in love with Nate and is not happy with everything that happened. In any case, we return to Nate, who is currently arriving at Ben's house and trying to search Ben's house for anything that would reveal Ben's workplace. From there, of course, he would be able to find out about the gang Ben works with. The thing is, Ben's house is cool and literally booby-trapped. Nate keeps stepping on one trap after another, getting hurt, getting hit with a ball, stabbed with a knife, and even gets a dart in his leg. He keeps getting hit by something, and of course, he doesn't feel any pain, so it doesn't really matter to him much. He continues searching the place for anything that indicates where Ben works until he finally finds a coat that reveals to him that Ben used to work in a garage or car repair workshop, and now that garage or workshop is where Simon and Sherry currently are. Anyway, after Nate learns this information, he is literally ready to leave to rescue Sherry. But the problem is that he remains stuck in the situation as it is, unable to move at all. And that's why Nate gets an idea. He takes out his phone and calls his friend Roscoe to ask for help and to come rescue him from the trap. But Roscoe, of course, refuses. From their conversation, we learn that Roscoe and Nate are just online friends and have never met in real life. That's why Roscoe refuses to come to Nate's aid, because they aren't really close friends. They're just online friends. But Nate tells Roscoe that he has no other friends in this world except him, and that's why he called him. Anyone else. But he needs his help, because if he doesn't help him, he will die. And as you might say, my friend Nate feels sorry for his livelihood, so he decides to go save him. Up to this point, everything was fine. What wasn't fine, however, is that Henry, Ben's brother, is the one who arrives at the house first. Of course, he is surprised to see Nate hanging there. Up to this point, there aren't any major problems. The problems start when Henry is caught, and they find out that Ben's brother has now received news from the police that he was killed, and that the one who killed his brother is the bank employee who literally works as the assistant manager. And here, he learns that the one who killed his brother is the one tied up in front of him now. Consequently, Henry is shocked, and it is said that he tortures Nate afterward. In the end, he ties Nate to a chair and continues to severely torture him. He thought that Nate would be affected and suffer now, feeling upset. But Nate, of course, doesn't care at all and doesn't feel anything. But he pretends and acts as if he is feeling pain and suffering greatly, so that Henry continues doing what he's doing for as long as possible. In the end, Roscoe arrives, not taking too long, and indeed reaches the place, attacking Henry and engaging with him. Afterwards, Roscoe goes to Nate and frees him. Nate is shocked by Roscoe's appearance because, as you can see, Roscoe is bald, chubby, and short. However, Roscoe had told Nate that he was very tall, athletic, and resembled a famous actor named Jesse Momoa. This made Nate laugh at Roscoe, realizing he knew everything. This, my friend, teaches us not to believe everything we see on the internet. But aside from all this laughter, Roscoe manages to overpower Nate and gives them time to leave. But Andrea wakes and fights with Nate. Nate and Andrea keep hitting each other until Roscoe comes and throws a knife to Nate. The knife goes into Nate's hand, but as mentioned, he doesn't feel it. He then stabs Andrea's leg, causing him to let go. Andrea doesn't let go and continues to fight fiercely with Nate. Nate doesn't know what to do, but he notices that the arrow that had entered his leg earlier from the house's fate is still there. So he literally grabs Andrea's head and strikes the arrow into it. The arrow goes from Nate's leg through Andrea's head and into Nate's other leg, leaving Andrea hanging in the middle, dead. Of course, Nate is disgusted by the sight, but Roscoe has now woken up and completely frees him. He also starts treating and bandaging his wounds. Naturally, they continue talking and are happy to meet again. They plan how they will reach the villain, but they don't get the chance to do anything because the police, or rather Barbara and her assistant, arrive at the scene and surround the place from the outside. Nate and Roscoe consider the danger of escaping until they devise a good idea. Nate leaves the house, rides away, and escapes from Barbara. Thus, they pursue him and arrest him, believing they caught Nate because he's wearing a suit. However, they discover it's not Nate and that he tricked them by Roscoe wearing his suit and leading them while Nate escaped another way. So now they have arrested Roscoe and, in the process, they are looking for Nate, who seized the chance and escaped from the place. Nate has now arrived at the workshop he knows from the address found in Ben's house, and he finds Simon and Sherry there. He currently restrains Simon to free Sherry. Here, Simon talks to him and shocks Nate by revealing that Sherry is his sister and that they had been planning the bank heist from the beginning. She pretended to love him just to get the bank vault's secret code and steal it, nothing more. But she is his sister helping him and is a partner with him in the gang, and she didn't love him. Nate is shocked when he realizes that Sherry didn't love him and that he did this, enduring the troubles, pain, and harm. When Nate was shocked and focused on Sherry, Simon quickly seized the chance and struck Nate, causing the gun to fall from his hand. Simon then decided to attack Nate, pinning him under a car and lowering the car onto him to finish him off. Meanwhile, Sherry tries to stop Simon from his madness because she truly cares for Nate. She pressures Simon further and he draws his gun and aims it at Sherry to silence her. But before he can do that, Barbara and her assistant arrive, and Barbara's assistant hits Simon with a blow. And so they rescue everyone, including Nate, and the ambulance arrives to take Nate for treatment. They put him in the ambulance, but they handcuff Nate to the stretcher because, in their eyes, he still resembles a criminal. Keep in mind that the fact he's handcuffed is a bit of an issue. Anyway, Barbara and her assistant are currently taking Sherry's statement and moving on, and the case seems to be wrapping up. But the problem here is that Simon isn't dead. He quickly regains consciousness, shoots Barbara's assistant, and kills him. He doesn't stop. He also shoots Barbara and wounds her. Then Sain takes the money which he stole from the bank, gets into the ambulance with Knight, and escapes. Knight, of course, is in a coma and is in the vehicle, unaware. Meanwhile, Sherry wants to save Knight, who did all this for her and who truly loved her, and she loved him too. So she takes Barbara's car keys from her brother to chase Sain, stop him, and save Knight. Barbara asks Sherry to take her along. So she takes her with Roscoe, and they follow Simon and Knight, who are still in the ambulance. As for Simon and Knight, we see that Knight is waking up and sees Simon driving, not a paramedic. Knight tries to reach him but is handcuffed, as I said. This frustrates Knight, and he decides to snap himself out of it. So what does he do? He breaks his fingers and manages to free the handcuff from his hand. After that, Knight grabs the electric stun device and shocks Simon effectively. Naturally, Simon loses control of the vehicle and it veers off and flips over. But both Simon and Knight come out alive and they continue to fight each other, to the point where they exit the car and continue fighting each other. But Knight is literally exhausted and Simon is very strong, as we mentioned, so he manages to overpower him. Simon even breaks Knight's arm and is about to finish him off. But before he can do that, Shiro arrives and shoots at him, causing him to leave. This drives Simon crazy, and he goes after Shiro, hitting her with all his might. At this moment, Knight sees everything happening, so he gathers his strength and courage and goes to Simon, and he stabs him right in the mouth. Simon dies in a rather gruesome way, and we finally get rid of him. It's quite a relief. And that's it. The night ends. After a while, we see Nate in the hospital recovering from everything that happened to him from the beginning until now, with his loyal friend Raza by his side visiting him. Not long after all this, Detective Barbara arrives, happy to find that Nate has woken up. She starts thanking Nate for everything he did and informs him that the court sympathized with him because he was trying to save Sherry and deal with all those criminals. Because of this, the judge decided to sentence him to house arrest. That means 5 years of house arrest, and that's it. He won't spend a single day in prison. Nate is overjoyed and keeps thanking Barbara. About a year passes after all this, and we currently see Nate playing a game with Roscoe. They talk together like they used to, but their conversations are shorter because they've stopped lying to each other. They agree to meet regularly, meaning, in short, they have become real friends, not just online friends. And when Nate finishes his game with Roscoe, he heads to the prison to visit Sherry, whom he loves with all his heart. Nate sits with Sherry and they talk together, and from their conversation we learn that Sherry will be released from prison soon. At that time, she and Nate will get married and spend the rest of their lives together. With this very happy ending, the very crazy movie comes to an end. I hope you enjoyed it, and until we meet again in a new summary, all I can say is goodbye.